These 10 pros had very different outcomes after retiring. Let's start with this guy, who won the first ever CS major, and now he could be your teacher. This is ZNAJDER, a name you probably don't recognize unless you've been watching CS for a long time. He was part of Fnatic's major winning lineup back in 2013, alongside names like JW, Flusha, and PRONAX. After winning the major, his career became very unstable. He bounced around from team to team, and the constant career pressure kept building and building, eventually leading ZNAJDER to attempt to take his own life, which luckily his girlfriend prevented. And sadly, only a few months after this, ZNAJDER was involved in a car accident which involved his car swerving off a bridge into the water below. Thankfully, a rock broke a window which allowed him to escape, and only 2 days after this crash, he had to play in an important qualifier, still in shock. He did eventually manage to settle into Godsent for almost 2 years before officially retiring overnight in 2019. The reason why? Well, in short, the CS scene wasn't stable enough for him. He was struggling to find long-term opportunities, there was very limited money going around, and to this day, he says he's owed 30,000 euros from his time competing. Fortunately for ZNAJDER, a friend approached him about an opportunity teaching an esports course at a Swedish high school, which he didn't hesitate to take, and he's been working there ever since, and is now involved in other subjects such as English, physical education, and web development. A team he coaches from his esports class managed to actually win Gymnasialigan, one of the largest tournaments for high school students in the country. And at this high school, ZNAJDER also tutored a few current CS pros, such as ZTR, who said that it was an awesome school and ZNAJDER was an awesome instructor and coach. ZNAJDER said in this interview that he does want to eventually return to higher education and pursue a career in IT. However, in 2025, JW's organization Eyeballers actually partnered with the high school directly, with ZNAJDER being the main point of contact between the org and the school, so it seems he might be sticking around as a teacher for a while longer. And speaking of partnerships, I've got a partnership with today's sponsor. Now, SkinsMonkey is an automated trade site with tons of unique skins available, meaning you can always get the skins you want when you want them. SkinsMonkey also has a 30% deposit bonus, but using code SAMZ or just by clicking the link in the description, you'll get an additional 5% on your deposit. And if it's your first deposit, you can also get up to another $5 extra for free using code SAMZ. On SkinsMonkey, if you ever have any problems or questions, their 24/7 live support is always there to help. And also make sure you guys are checking out the freebies section to get free balance and to join all of their giveaways. Thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out using the link in the description. You probably wouldn't even recognize DAZED today compared to the player he used to be. Now he's got long hair and a completely different look, and he's tweeting about supercomputers controlling the universe, so we need to rewind a bit to see what got him to this state. DAZED is a former North American IGL, mostly well known for being part of the iBuyPower match-fixing scandal and getting banned by Valve, and obviously also known for his many rage clips.
Fucking Glocks! Holy shit! Like I'm playing with a coach! A manager! How am I supposed to win?
But what many people didn't realize is that Valve's ban only applied to Valve-sponsored tournaments, which means majors and major qualifying events. Third-party organizers like ESL and DreamHack technically could have let them compete, but they chose to follow Valve's lead and banned them from their events as well. But that all changed in 2017 when ESL updated its rulebook alongside E6 and lifted the ban for ESL competitions, meaning DAZED and the rest of the roster were suddenly allowed to compete again in events like ESL Pro League.
DAZED, you there? Congratulations, my man. You're unbanned.
What?
You're unbanned.
You trolling me?
No, I swear to God, bro, you're unbanned. What's your first reaction? Don't drop hard R's.
Once this reality set in, several members of the old iBuyPower core briefly reunited under a new team called GX, but their comeback never really got off the ground. After just a couple of months, DAZED stepped away from the roster, saying he simply wasn't putting in the same grind as his teammates anymore, and that he wanted to focus more on YouTube and streaming. And that's what he did. Over the next few years, he built a solid audience alongside other North American personalities like Mo and Tarek, and during this time he also did some work as an analyst and did commentary for a few CS events. He was also uploading regularly to YouTube, which included a lot of sponsored gambling content, some of which he later admitted had been rigged before deleting the videos entirely. DAZED eventually stopped uploading YouTube videos in 2018, but he continued streaming fairly actively. Nothing was really notable apart from this one clip I found.
And then I go and I have my hand like here, like on her face kinda, and put my thumb, and she's like about to suck on it. But instead of sucking on my thumb, she fucking bites it. And I was kinda drunk, so I just smacked the shit out of her, like way too hard.
And for whatever reason, DAZED actually then stopped streaming from July of 2018 up until 2020, when Valorant was released. And DAZED decided to give it a try, and he was actually pretty good. Good enough even to get signed by T1 to play professional Valorant. T1's results, well, they weren't great. The lineup really struggled in official matches, and after only 9 months, DAZED was cut from the organization. So now without a team to play for, DAZED cut back on streaming, only rarely going live, and every time he did, he'd just lose followers. So naturally in 2023, he stopped streaming entirely. Now DAZED wasn't posting YouTube content, he wasn't streaming, and he wasn't competing professionally. So what was he doing? Well, for the most part, we don't know. The only place he was still active was Twitter, but but he was mostly just posting links to songs and talking about random sports events. Then these tweets started getting a little more cryptic. In October of 2024, he posted a captionless image of Plato's cave, which is a philosophical metaphor illustrating the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. And then not long after that, he posted this with the caption, "Some endure eons engulfed in darkness, praying for a glimpse of life." People were obviously a bit confused. This was the same IGL who was screaming at teammates for being toxic, and now he was posting some enlightened caption with a picture of himself. And people commented on the fact that he looked very different. And I mean, he does look a lot thinner compared to the physique he had while he was a professional player, as well as now having a clean-shaven face and this long hair. Just look at these pictures side by side. The difference is actually crazy. And then the next months went back to a bit more music and sports tweets. But one tweet of him had a caption in Russian. That's a bit strange, right? An American writing in Russian? I wonder why. Well, from what I can gather, it seems that he was picking up from his dance instructor. Oh, did I mention he started dancing? He's actually, like, low-key fucking this shit up. I can't even lie. Anyway, this dance instructor can be seen and heard talking from behind the camera with a fairly thick Russian accent.
Very good, correct.
This is the main turning point in DAZED story. Everything after this dancing tweet just gets worse and worse. The next few videos are him at the same dance studio practicing Russian with his dick like in our faces, and then he posted him fake crying in the same dance studio saying this.
Нет, нет, вы не мой, пожалуйста, вы не мой.
Again, the community was split. Some people laughed at him, some people mocked him, and some people were wondering why no one was helping him. After this, he posted multiple clips speaking Russian with captions such as solitude and rejected, and then things continued to get a lot stranger. DAZED started setting up his camera and singing full renditions of songs with no context. He'd just sit on his balcony singing at the top of his lungs.
10 years we've been rusting, needing so much more than dusting. We exercise a chance to use our skills.
Then we get to the first mention of the supercomputer, and after literally days of looking through these tweets where he stands in front of a whiteboard talking about a supercomputer controlling the universe and how he's genetically better than everyone, I figured out that he's literally saying nothing. He believes there's some higher power controlling everyone else and he's the only enlightened one. And that kind of thinking, this like extreme grandiosity and believing you've unlocked some hidden truth, is often a symptom of drug-induced psychosis. Heavy stimulants like cocaine can cause paranoia and inflated ego, and you mix that with heavy drinking and not eating, it can leave someone absolutely convinced they've cracked the code to the universe, even if to everyone else it just sounds like complete nonsense. In one of his many whiteboard rant videos, he admits that he's been smoking weed every 5 minutes for 10 years.
Think about my lungs compared to yours. I have literally been smoking weed every 5 minutes for like 10 fucking years. Okay?
And also later says this.
We have absorption. Again, acid, LSD, these things, MDMA. My body absorbs them, loves them, makes me even better. Okay?
Let's take a moment and watch some of another tweet.
These women are hell-bent on the destruction of my ego. Russian women, biggest egos ever. Have you guys ever had vodka with shots of ponzu sauce? You don't eat any food, okay? You just drink sparkling water. You fucking have cigarettes. You never have to eat. Your urine, it becomes a nice dark brownish color because we are filtering out all the toxins by fasting.
In that clip, he not only brings up Russian women having huge egos, but he mentions his current diet, which involves no food and only alcohol, cigarettes, and sparkling water. But at the end of this rant, he almost snaps back to normal. He removes his accent and says,
I swear I will only do one take. Fuck this shit. If you guys are this stupid, it is unbelievable.
This added just even more confusion to fans and viewers. People still couldn't tell if he actually needed help or if he was just trolling, but it soon became apparent that this wasn't just some troll and that DAZED was actually losing his mind. The sheer volume of tweets alone would have been enough to insinuate this, but towards the end of 2025, he started posting more egotistically with captions like "Supreme Being" and "Bow to me peasants," and of course a video of him singing in Spanish with the caption proclaiming he's the perfect human being. And there's also a video of him rapping along with Kendrick Lamar, and he drops this.
You nigga couldn't try me in the tri-state.
His tweets just kept getting worse and worse, until finally one day, during a long ranting session, he tweeted, "I am not afraid, farewell." This tweet worried a lot of people who thought maybe he'd finally reached a breaking point, and a lot of people tagged Mo, the same guy who told DAZED he was unbanned back in 2017. Mo posted saying he reached out to him, but this friendly act would only last a couple of weeks, because after that crash out, DAZED posted a picture of himself, which Mo replied, "Nice shirt, do they make it in men's?" And then DAZED ratioed the fuck out of him. This then led to a huge back and forth between these these two guys, seemingly not just friendly trolling, but actually resenting each other. Mo at one point even replied with a gif that said cocaine's a hell of a drug. From the looks of things, these two aren't on the best of terms anymore. And after this back and forth, DAZED settled into a new schizo era, which was focusing his attention on newer generation streamers, such as Jinxie, saying he's evil and that eternal agony awaits them and to enjoy hell. He'd post these tweets almost every day, seemingly picking whichever relevant streamer he probably saw on his Twitter feed. He would write some crap about it and post it, all often just for a few likes. And you might think he's trolling, but why would someone post all of this in just a few days for a few likes? Even if he was being ironic, he spent so much time writing this, it's just not worth it. He truly believes he's onto something, and he's still going. Probably even right now, if you go to his Twitter, he'll be posting some random bullshit. But nevertheless, if this is some long-winded troll or a genuine crisis, DAZED still sets up his camera, he hits record, he proceeds to have whatever breakdown he's having, and then he uploads the clips himself, which has left some people wondering if this is some genuine crisis, or if he's deliberately leaning into this chaos he's creating for attention. And at this point, nobody really seems sure what's actually going on, or when and how this will end for DAZED. Unlike DAZED, another player banned by Valve did actually manage to turn their ban into a success story, and that's KQLY. Now, KQLY's ban was actually a VAC ban, and you've probably heard about hitting a KQLY, which we all say because of this shot he hit.
I can't believe what I'm witnessing right here. Wow! Get out of here!
And fast forward a bit, and it turns out KQLY had actually used cheats. We're not sure if he used it in that clip, but then he was banned by Valve from competing in CS.
KQLY was banned? No. Seriously? No. KQLY is not cheating, man.
KQLY agreed that the ban was justified and he would stop competing in Tier 1 CS for a while, returning in 2017 after joining Vexed, who literally gave him a fidget spinner with KQLY style on it. I scrolled all the way through his Twitter, so I felt like I had to include that. KQLY wasn't competing in any big tournaments, only playing in qualifiers and C and B tier events. But then in 2018, he founded a team called eFrog, which unfortunately for him didn't do very well, and the team stopped competing about a year later. And after all of this, KQLY stepped away from the spotlight of CS. He very rarely streamed and only really tweeted about pro CS events. So what was KQLY doing during this time? Well, it turns out at some point during 2019, he packed up and moved to Los Angeles, where he began working for a car rental company. It's not known publicly what he actually does for this company, but I did some digging and I found out he's not the owner of the company, so it seems like he's just under their employment. However, in KQLY's Instagram bio, it says he does mansions, private jets, and yachts, and these things obviously VEM don't offer, they're just a car rental business. So it's a bit confusing who KQLY works for, but it looks like he primarily fixes car rentals for famous clientele. And some of these celebrities include DaBaby, Soulja Boy, French Montana, NLE Chopper, Lil Baby, Arman Sarukian, Kamzat Chimaev, Wiz Khalifa, and plenty more. So it's safe to say KQLY is pretty well connected. I reached out to KQLY on Instagram to see if he'd be down to do an interview for this video, but he said no, which is fair. I wouldn't want to talk to me either. KQLY is very much retired. It doesn't look like he needs to come back to Pro CS, but he still enjoys watching from the sidelines. And one of KQLY's old teammates is now also watching from the sidelines, but for very different reasons. And that's Maniac. Maniac was never the flashy player. He was the guy doing the boring roles on those early French teams. And to be fair to him, he actually made it work. He played in multiple majors and held his own in teams full of much more individually skilled players. But that was also the problem, because when you're the smart support guy, you're usually the easiest one to replace. And that's exactly what happened in Titan. In 2015, right when Titan was still a top team, Maniac got kicked and they brought in Scream. And there's no real controversy here, it was just a straight upgrade in firepower. After that, Maniac's CS career just never really stabilizes again. He bounced around between teams and he even became a coach for a while, but he wasn't really part of that top French core anymore. And by 2018, he basically finished competing. Instead, he moved to the desk as an analyst. He worked at countless events, he broke down moments in the games, explaining what teams were doing and what to expect from them, and frankly, he was really good at his job. So much so that he was used as an analyst for 4 official CS majors, but all of Maniac's success as desk talent shifted out of the limelight in 2024, following the Blast Spring final in London, where allegations started coming out about his behavior at an after party. The first woman's accusation described Maniac repeatedly groping, grabbing, and following her around the afterparty despite clear discomfort, and Maniac responded fairly quickly to this, tweeting that he remembered things differently and that he believed that the interaction was mutual, but also admitted he may have misread the situation. Not long after that though, a second person came forward with a very similar story, and there were witnesses to back it up. But despite Maniac saying these allegations weren't true, he stepped away from the broadcast he was currently working on, saying that he didn't want his drama to be a distraction from the CS being played. Then other reports came forward describing similar behavior going back to at least 2022, with multiple multiple people recalling incidents with Maniac at different events and after parties, which usually involved him being intoxicated and overly physical with non-consenting women. And according to this Dust 2 article, someone came forward and said that Maniac had contacted them when they were just 17 years old, and he asked if they were excited to turn 18, and after finishing ESL Pro League, messaged her again, and after she didn't reply, apologized 5 hours later for being horny. For reference, he was 33 at the time. At this point, the situation had clearly escalated from a singular accusation, and tournament organizers started making their own decisions regarding Maniac's future. Blast confirmed a complaint had been already made internally and upheld, and said they had no plans to work with him again. ESL removed Maniac from their broadcast talent, and PGL also distanced themselves shortly after. Maniac then released one last statement, and instead of denying things outright, he admitted to what he called unacceptable behavior over a longer period of time, saying alcohol had played a huge role and pointing to personal issues, including parts of his childhood, as contributing factors. So instead of taking accountability for his actions, he blamed alcohol, his childhood, and even social media for them, which obviously to the public looked like an attempt to shift blame, and a lot of people called him out for this. At the end of his statement, he said he would be taking some time to reassess his life, as well as saying he'd make a video taking accountability for his actions and apologize once he'd found some peace. And he did release a video, but he did anything but take accountability. Throughout this almost entire 8-minute long video, Maniac doesn't once apologize to the people he harassed. Instead, he talked about how he'd been managing his emotions and going to therapy. This video obviously caused even further backlash. Viewers, organizations, colleagues, essentially the entire CS community had turned against him. And because of this, Maniac would step away from the internet for a few months, but then returned to do analytical Twitch streams about CS, and he posted these 3-hour-long streams to a YouTube channel, which didn't get any success. During this time, Maniac also limited who could reply to his tweets, up until the 22nd of February, when he decided to allow people to comment on his posts again for the first time since the allegations were made, and the response was as you might expect. I mean, the internet never forgets. Under every tweet and reply since then, there's always some comment about him being a predator, and he would often reply sarcastically, almost like these allegations weren't that important. Maniac would continue interacting with people and replying with these sort of messages until October, when he disappeared from the internet entirely. He's no longer active on Twitch, Twitter, or any social media, so it's unclear what Maniac is up to right now. It's likely that he realized that the internet won't let him continue with his career like nothing happened, and has to find some new path in life. But there was someone who commented about the Maniac situation and actually offered to take his place as desk talent, and that was PashaBiceps. But we can't just jump straight into this. Pasha has probably the most insane post-retirement career out of anyone in this list. We need to check it from the beginning. After Virtus Pro terminated his contract in February of 2019, Pasha made his retirement official just 2 weeks later at IEM Katowice. In front of a packed Spodek Arena crowd, he was invited onto the stage to carry out the trophy as a tribute to all his years in Counter-Strike, an emotional ceremonial farewell for the game he dedicated his life to. But immediately, just like most pro athletes, he found himself competing again with a new team called Youngsters. He competed with these up-and-coming talents, but they didn't do very well, and it wasn't long before they stopped competing. And this time, that was Pasha done for good. After this, Pasha was signed to Team Liquid as part of their stream team. He basically just represented the org during his live streams, with some small expectation that he might be able to stand in for Team Liquid if they needed it in official games.
If someone cannot go to tournament, you know my number. You know I am very skillful player, but I will kill every single kill, my friend. Call me if you need player. So yeah.
They never used him. During this time, Pasha was also working on a huge project, Pasha Gaming Camp. He initially launched Pasha Gaming School, which was essentially just a Face-It league with some extra lessons taught by Pasha, but this wasn't enough for him. Pasha Gaming Camp was designed as a yearly getaway for kids and teenagers, basically a modern summer camp that focused on fitness and Counter-Strike, ran by PashaBiceps. It had a full curriculum and offered lots of different physical and Counter-Strike related activities. Something worth mentioning though, I found these stream clips from the camp where Pasha is surrounded by teenagers and they're opening cases on a gambling site. And this guy in the comments said he was at the event and this gambling was happening throughout the gaming camp. I'm not one to judge anyone for promoting case sites, I've literally done it myself, but I think that Pasha should have probably known better than to do it in his camp designed for kids, especially allowing obviously underage people to open them for him on his stream. Regardless, Pasha has hosted these events every year since then, eventually branching into an adults only version, and has big plans for hosting more events more frequently, and in different locations. Very recently also branching out into frequent cycling events. Going back to 2022, Pasha announced that he would be taking part in an exhibition boxing match, but weirdly done inside of an octagon and in MMA gloves. Fight night came and he ended up breaking his opponent's eye socket, which led to a TKO victory. As per usual, Pasha was very humble in victory, even taking the time in his winning speech to thank esports fans for their support.
I would like to thank you very much for my big esports fans. You are not my friends, you are my brothers, my friends.
The next year, Pasha would fight again, this time in MMA, and unfortunately for him, he ended up getting choked unconscious and lost the fight. Major props for not tapping though. These are just a few of the physically extreme things Pasha has done. To briefly touch on some more, in 2023 he cycled 1,800 kilometers from Warsaw to Paris to attend the Blast Major. Then he did the same for the 2024 Copenhagen Major, but this time only 1,000 kilometers, but he cycled across the Baltic Sea to get there. This guy's physicality is on another level. In June of 2025, he announced his own energy drink, Papito Energy, and it didn't take long before he was partnered with one of Poland's biggest grocery stores. I wanted to try it for this video, but sadly they don't ship to the UK. Thank you, Brexit. Anyway, another thing Pasha's working on is eSport Ninja, basically a combination of the Ninja Warrior show and Counter-Strike. It debuted in October of 2025, featuring an obstacle course and PC setups where you need to complete CS challenges. Pasha is aiming for it to become a recurring venue at CS eSport events, with its main reason being to promote healthy lifestyles among children and young people. And while doing all of these projects, Pasha's been streaming and producing content more actively than ever. He's also done a lot of charitable work. He recently sold his famous knife for around $21,000 and donated the entire amount to a charity livestream supporting cancer fighters. Pasha has done all of this since retiring. He's physically active and keeping himself busy with products, projects, his community, and his family. It is really hard to fault this guy. He's a family man who keeps himself out of controversy. The same, however, cannot be said for ZEUS. ZEUS was always very eccentric. From his in-game moments to walkouts, he was the polar opposite of this shy gamer stereotype. He announced his retirement at the Berlin Major in 2019, but his last official tournament was not long after in Moscow. But after hanging up the mouse, ZEUS got right to work and opened 2 businesses back in his home of Ukraine. First, an esports venue called ZARena, basically a gaming-focused internet cafe with lots of PCs, an area to have watch parties, and even a restaurant that offered hookah. And at the same time, ZEUS opened a pizzeria called Chicago Pizza by ZEUS, which he even served at ZARena. Also in 2020, ZEUS released the English version of his book. Originally published in Russian in 2019, this book is a deep dive into his entire career, but I wasn't going to pay $40 to read it. I'm sorry, ZEUS. But with the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, ZEUS packed up and moved to Bali. It seems like he sold his pizza business and ZARena was renamed to 3 Arena and hasn't posted any content since then, so it looks like it's also shut down. In sunny Bali though, ZEUS was thriving. He and his brother invested more than $300,000 into a bar, as well as investing into some sort of internet gaming cafe and also a nail salon. As well as investing into Bali's economy, he was also invested heavily into the women. There are so many clips of ZEUS surrounded by women in his house, often groping and doing sexual acts on them, and many of them look like they don't want to be there.
По барабану, смотри, как я стучу. Давай, come on.
And the reason I bring this up is because in December of 2024, ZEUS was invited to Shanghai as an honorary guest for the Perfect World Shanghai Major. While he was there, he was keeping fans on Telegram updated with his escapades, including his wish to hook up with a Chinese woman. He met one woman on Tinder who claimed to be 27, but turned out to be over 40. Another woman took advantage of him by taking him to a bar she worked at and making him buy super overpriced drinks. But on December 16th, ZEUS, who was 37 at the time, met a female 21-year-old Chinese university student.
Hello.
Hello.
And the two spent the night together in a hotel. ZEUS got very drunk that night and was posting constantly about his encounter with the woman. ZEUS then shared intimate photos and videos of the encounter. One video even showed her sleeping next to him, and then he panned down and showed he'd literally shat himself. The content then spread virally. There was outrage across China because ZEUS had called Chinese women easy. But the outrage wasn't really directed at ZEUS, instead at the woman, essentially slut-shaming her for making China look bad. And what was the first thing ZEUS did after landing back in Bali?
Барди, зачем ты принес мне эту еду? А? Ну давай попробуем вот эту штучку. Пробовали когда-то собачий корм?
7 months later, her university issued their first and only response to the drama, a formal expulsion notice on their official website. In short, it said, "Your inappropriate behavior on December 16th has caused severe negative impact. You are hereby subject to expulsion." The notice cited 2 violations: sexual relations before marriage and having an improper relationship with a foreigner that harms national dignity. They also published her full name, but ZEUS, who leaked the content in the first place, faced no consequences whatsoever. No visa ban, no fines, nothing. He did issue a sort of apology, but it was pretty obviously written by AI. He explained the situation and asked for hate against the woman to stop and to put an end to this topic. But this drama didn't stop ZEUS. He was already onto another project, this time a mushroom supplement called Zentra, and he marketed them on Instagram and live streams.
So this funny question, have you ever tried mushrooms? I want now.
Yes.
And to buy them, you had to go to his ZEUS Academy website. On this website, he sells a copy of his book, his mushroom supplements, some stickers, and a letter from himself for $50. Again, ZEUS, I'm sorry I didn't buy this. ZEUS Academy also offers a free course from ZEUS about Counter-Strike, guides on how to pick your role, how to save, how to communicate, training routines, etc. And today, ZEUS is streaming and making content a lot more regularly, mainly because he's sponsored by multiple crypto casinos. His streams are usually CS related, but are insanely chaotic. You'll never really know what you're going to see tuning in. And on the subject of Shanghai, did you know that's where KQLY lives now? Kenny officially announced his retirement on stage during the 2023 Blast Paris Major.
Yeah, I'm retiring from competition.
And in March of 2024, Kenny was invited to China to attend the national finals of a Counter-Strike tournament for college students, which was set up by multi-millionaire Tony Shui. These two immediately hit it off, and not long after, during a show match with Simple, KQLY announced that he'd be moving to Shanghai.
I decided to move to Shanghai, China.
Kenny said that the reason he moved was to grow as a person and to look for fulfillment, also mentioning that he wasn't offered any money to do so.
Who made you move in China? Nobody made me move in China. I took the risk alone.
And it looks like this was just said to put to rest the notion that he was part of some sort of state-sponsored program. And then at the end of 2024, Kenny was working with Tony Shui to create the Chinese Katowice, and their main ambition was to basically put Chinese CS back on the map. But the main thing it seems that Kenny was really doing was being a content creator for China. He was streaming for Chinese viewers on Chinese platforms and was collaborating with other Chinese content creators to help make these streams successful. At the same time, he was also streaming occasionally on Twitch for European viewers, but most of the time playing on Perfect World Client, which is basically just Chinese Face It. He was taking part in show matches, like this one with Nico, Scream, Monazy, and Cadian. He was also making YouTube videos showing his lifestyle. Now he lives in China. He showed us how he was learning Chinese, and even was attending Chinese Valorant events. And this just seems to be the way he's living now. He's going from event to event, sponsor to sponsor, likely racking up tons of money in the process, and in his words,
No, guys, I'm planning to stay in China for a really long time. My life is in China now.
So it's unlikely that KQLY is coming back to Europe anytime soon. But someone who keeps coming back is PRONAX, but it's back to his ex's front door. And I really shouldn't be joking about this, it does seem to be a fairly serious situation, but PRONAX, who was a 3-time major winning champion, has been exposed by his ex, who claims they were never in a relationship to begin with, for harassing her, her family, and even her ex-teammates. From what she says, PRONAX has been spam messaging her on multiple accounts, calling her from multiple different phone numbers, and even standing outside her house at least 4 times. And according to PRONAX's own mother, their family does have a history of schizophrenia, which is fairly cohesive with PRONAX's symptoms. They've tried to admit him to a psychiatric ward, but due to Swedish law, they can't force him to be there. Back in 2020, though, he was taken to a psychiatric ward, but just for one night, and he claimed that his colleagues forced him to go there and that they were conspiring against him to remove him from Godsend. Now, I'm unsure about PRONAX's current situation. These tweets were from late 2024, and PRONAX seemingly isn't publicly active on social media, and it's unclear if he's getting the help he needs. But what is clear is that his issues and his harassment has been going on for a very long time, and it's also very unlikely that we'll be seeing PRONAX involved in Counter-Strike ever again. But then again, we have seen people come and go from Counter-Strike in the past, just like FNX. FNX actually first retired from Counter-Strike before CSGO was even a thing, and then came back, he won 2 majors, he semi-retired, and then started playing professionally again, and then moved to a coaching position, and then finally retired again, but now is teasing another comeback attempt. So honestly, it's easier just for me to list some of the things he's done outside of his stop and start CS career. Starting with probably the most interesting, which was his appearance on the Brazilian TV show, which is basically Brazil's version of X on the beach. FNX has also been running his own clothing line since at least 2017, and luckily since then the designs have improved a bit. He's worked as desk talent during the Copenhagen Major, he's also been in Brazilian rappers' music videos, but more recently he's leaned into being a content creator. He's got sponsorships with companies like Gillette, BetBoom, Samsung, and was even a host for a Brazilian tournament called All-Star League. So FNX may return to Pro CS at some point, but I wouldn't hold out too much hope as he seems like he's doing pretty well right now. And someone else who may also return in the future is Obo. Now, Obo hasn't officially announced his retirement, but he hasn't been a part of a professional roster since late 2021 when he was removed from Evil Geniuses. Not long after his removal, Obo was making headlines again, this time for posting a series of cryptic and concerning images on Twitter, which he's since deleted. And for his privacy, I won't be showing any of them unblurred, but he looked much skinnier than he already did before, as well as having very long fingernails and seemingly dirty, unwashed skin. These images caused so much concern among fans and other pros that Jason Lake, the owner of Complexity, an organization Obo used to play for, tweeted that he'd reached out and spoken with Obo's family, which put a lot of people's minds at ease as it looked like he'd start getting the support he needed. But unfortunately, it seems like Obo's problems continued into 2023, when Obo randomly started streaming after 4 years of inactivity. However, I could only find one of these live streams that was re-uploaded. In this stream, Obo is playing a Face It game alongside Flom and Freakazoid. Obo barely speaks for the first 10 minutes and is playing some Roman positive affirmation video as background music. But then he randomly says this.
I'm on Adderall withdrawal right now. I'm withdrawing from Adderall.
Fast forward a few minutes and he says,
I want Adderall, Ritalin, and Vyvanse from Dr. Thompson.
And at this point, it was clear that Obo shouldn't be live. He's discussing personal medical details and bringing up his doctor, and luckily Obo's brother came in and told him to stop talking about Adderall. Obo didn't listen, and continued to talk about it. Chatters in Freakazoid's stream were also letting him know about Obo's situation, and you can clearly see the concern in his eyes while watching Obo's stream POV. Later on in the stream, Obo says that there is a witch in his life who's controlling his family, called Hayden Tiffany. He mentions this witch multiple times, and eventually his brother comes in and asks him to stop streaming, which he doesn't do, and a few minutes later, Obo's stream disconnects. He also disconnected from the Face It game, so it's likely his family just turned off the internet. Despite his situation, it looks like he continued playing CSGO right through to CS2 and onwards, but at this point, Obo had deleted all of his social media, he wasn't competing anymore, and was dealing with some serious drug-related problems. But to end this video on a positive note, while researching, I spoke with Matthew David, who was one of the first to discover and coach Obo into Pro CS. I asked him if he knew how Obo was doing, and if we might ever see him return to competitive CS, and he told me that Obo still plays regularly, but with real life friends, and according to Obo's best friend, he's doing a lot better. Matthew also said that Obo has not been pursuing any kind of career back in CS as of recent, but who knows about the future. So, Obo is safe, he's with friends and family and staying out of the limelight, which is probably the best situation he could be in. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to subscribe, I've got lots of videos coming soon.